Okay, good. Welcome. We have been, just a little history and background about us, we have been conducting our Dinner with the Doctor programs for about 5 years, where we have a doctor come in, we do a health lecture, and we serve whole food plant-based meals. And so we normally do that, we have that every month, but we're kind of mixing it up right now. And we are now doing, because so many people are interested in gardening, and it's very important to, because of food these days, you really don't know what's in it, what chemicals, pesticides, and so it's good to be able to take control and know where your food is coming from. And this is why we have organic gardening. Our presenter is going to be Seth Schaefer. Seth is from Southern Adventist University, where he teaches sustainable food systems, and he's very knowledgeable in this area. And he's got some, I can see he's got some really nice handouts here at the end of the program that he'll be sharing with us. Another couple of things. We also have some handouts that are going to be coming around to you. And one thing, because we are very interested in health and being proactive in our health, as we're doing and you're working with different vegetables and you're planning, one of the sheets that you're going to be getting is, it's kind of a challenge, a weekly challenge for you. And did you know that eating 30 different plant-based foods per week significantly increases your gut microbiome diversity, and you're boosting your immunity? Very, very important to have good immunity. That's going to help us to prevent from getting sick. And there's so many, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, so many diseases going on right now. I mean, I think we've all been hit with things, and very, not so good, but very strong strains, more stronger than what we've had in the past. So very important to keep our immune system up and healthy. And so on this, it's going to be giving you a little checklist of different vegetables, and it doesn't have every one, but then you can fill in if you're going to be, look to get different vegetables that you're not normally eating. You know, step out of your comfort zone and try something new, you know, a new green. Because they all contain different nutrients, which is very important for our bodies. We're also going to be serving a whole food plant-based meal, and we do that in all the programs that we do have. We have there's a couple recipes that I have, and one of them I didn't have, and but I'm happy to tell you the recipe. After, at the end of the program. It's for the chicken salad sandwiches that you can have, and it's not chicken, but I hope you'll enjoy them. We're also going to be having an almond raisin cookie. We don't cook with oil or the sugars, and so I think you're going to enjoy them. They are very tasty recipes. And also we're going to have potato salad. These are non-dairy. And so we look forward to your tasting them, and give us your opinion. And if you have any questions on them or ingredients in them, yes, please hand them out. We're going to start handing them out. So what we're going to do is to open with a word of prayer, and then we're going to turn this over to Seth. And during, as Seth is presenting, we're going to be serving you a meal. Okay, so we're just going to go right into the program. And I'm sure that Seth's going to have many Q&A because we all have Q&A, especially for gardening, because it's all different. And we're all different depending on what you're doing. Raised bed or ground gardening, or maybe container gardening. But we encourage you, take away from this program, start, you know, do something. Get a pot, get it on your deck, you know, plant something, and which would be helpful. So let's bow our heads, and we're going to have a word of prayer. Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we are so thankful for you most of all, thankful for the sun that is shining down on us right now. And we pray for a blessing on this program. Give Seth the knowledge, the words to speak to all of us, and that we can take away and learn and do. And we pray for a blessing on this food that will nourish and strengthen our bodies. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay, we're going to turn this over to Seth. Thank you.
All right, how's everyone doing today? How's the audio? Everybody hear me? No? Awesome! I can relax now. Okay, so thank you for the introduction. So my name's Seth Schaefer. I teach sustainable agriculture, and I'm going to give a very brief, quick introduction about our farm before I get started, and then we're going to go ahead and get into the program. I will ask if you can hold your questions until the end. I'm going to get rolling on things, and I do want to be respectful of people's time, so that way if people have to leave at the end of the program, they can do so without being delayed. All right, so my family's farm is Red Clay Farm. We're located up in Cleveland, Tennessee, and we are primarily a vegetable farm. We do have some apples and pear trees that should start production within the next year or so. Oh, that is much nicer. Thank you. But we are primarily a vegetable four-season vegetable farm. So right now we are getting our spring crops in the ground, getting more crops ready to go into the ground, seeding, etc. We have some fall/winter crops that are already in the ground that are nearing the end of their lifespan, and so we're going to be pulling those out fairly soon. So there's always something going on at the farm. We do, like I said, we do primarily vegetables, but we also have a stone mill where we grind corn, wheat, etc., and turn it into cornmeal, grits, rye for rye flour, wheat for AP flour, bread flour, etc. We also do microgreens, which towards the end of the program, I'll give you a quick demonstration on how to grow microgreens. Microgreens are probably one of the easiest and fastest crops that you can grow. Generally speaking, they take about 7 to 10 days from the time you seed them to the time they are ready to be harvested and then used. So it's really a fun thing to do. And the good thing about them is they can be done indoors 365 days a year. So it doesn't matter if it's blazingly hot outside or frigidly cold, microgreens can keep on cranking for you. All right, so obviously it's the 1st of March. We are getting some very nice weather outside. So if you haven't already purchased your seeds, starting supplies, thought about what you want to do for your spring or just year-round or summer garden, now is the time to do it. Definitely get your seeds started, get your soil ready. If you don't have anything to plant, still get your soil ready. Do a soil test, do amendments, so that way you're ready to hit the ground rolling when you have your plants or your seeds. All right, so usually this time of year, end of February, beginning of March, we tend to get a whole lot of rain. So if your growing area, if you're doing it just out in your yard, or if you have a field that you're going to be growing into, sometimes the dirt can be very soggy, and so if you can make any type of a raised bed, whether it's your standard raised bed that's surrounded by wood, or if you just put down a huge pile of compost and then spread it out and make your beds out of that and then plant into it, that'll keep your plants above the water level for any massive amount of rain that may come in. Thankfully, I made these beds prior to a very large rainstorm, and unfortunately we have a lot of clay in this area. So you can see what I was walking in. I was a pretty nice mess by the time it was all said and done. But thankfully I was able to get my plants in the ground, and they were able to take off and start growing without getting waterlogged because of all the extra rain and the puddles that were sticking around after the rain. All right, so if you're just starting out, you've never had a garden or a raised bed before, or maybe it's your 20th year doing it, go ahead and this time of year is a good time to go ahead and mow it, get it tilled, add your amendments. You should have already taken a soil test, or if not, go ahead and take a soil test, send it off to a lab. You can do this either by going through your county extension agent, or I use Waters Agricultural Lab. They have bases in Kentucky, Georgia, and Mississippi, possibly in North Carolina if I remember correctly. But basically all you do is you just take a container out there, you can take a trowel, dig down about 4, maybe 6 inches deep into your soil, take a soil sample in a zigzag pattern throughout the area that you are wanting to grow your crops, put it in a container and send it to the lab. They will go ahead and do a soil analysis, and then they will either mail you back the results, or if you submit a email address, they will email you the results. Generally speaking, you'll get the results back in less than a month, sometimes even about a week. It just depends on when you do it. Springtime is a busy time of year for them, so it might take a little bit longer. You want to make sure that after you've gone through all the work of doing a soil test and getting the results back, that you pay attention to the results and you actually follow the results. You can let the lab know what your plans are for what type of crops you're going to be growing in this area. You can divide your bed up or your garden area up into different sections and just do a soil test for each different section and let them know what's going to be growing there, and they will send you recommendations tailored to not only your soil type but also the crops that you are planning on growing in your garden area. So these are very helpful. Alright, so okay, I won't turn. You can add compost. Leaves make excellent compost. You can also purchase compost at different garden stores. I usually, because I have a lot of trees on the farm, I will usually spread a 4-inch layer of compost on top of my beds. If I can do it in the late summer, fall, prior to when I'm going to be growing in this area, I'll just put down fresh compost, and over the winter I will let it decompose, rot into the soil, and then come spring it's ready to be planted into. If I have any well-rotted manures or other soil amendments, I will go ahead and add them at that time. It's not going to cause any detrimental effect if you add your amendments in the fall and just let things sit over the winter time. A lot of times I will cover the area with a tarp after I have laid down the amendments, and that simply just provides an extra layer of protection for the amendments. It keeps it dark and allows the soil organisms to come up and just start feeding on, like, if it's the compost or the leaves that I've added, and they start dragging those amendments down into the soil and incorporating them ahead of time for me. You can also put down a cover crop. Does anybody here know what a cover crop is? Have you heard of that term before? Okay, a couple people. All right, so basically a cover crop is basically a weed that you plant ahead of time to protect and nourish your soil. So basically a cover crop could be, if we're looking at a winter one, it could be wheat, it could be rye, it could be daikon radishes or tillage radishes. In the summertime, it could be peas, oats, sunflowers, different type of crops like that. You can do them either as a monocrop or as a blend of several different crops. Buckwheat is also another one that can be added there. And basically, you plant this crop and you just let it sit. You're not going to be harvesting the crop. You're not going to do anything with it. You're going to wait until the crop almost reaches maturity. Right before it starts to flower or go to seed, that's when you want to terminate the crop. You can do it by mowing it and tilling it into your soil, or if it is a cover crop like buckwheat, which has very simple stems that are easy to break, you can just pull a silage tarp or other type of tarp over it, and then just cover it and let it be killed that way, and then it'll slowly work its way into the soil as it decomposes. Cover crops do not add nutrients to the soil by themselves. Their primary goal, or one of their primary goals, is to scavenge and hold any nutrients that are already in the soil for your future crops. I like doing daikon radishes because, number one, they help to break up any compaction or hard pans I may have in the soil. Number two, with that huge taproot that's going to be down deep in my soil, it is gathering any and all nutrients that may have seeped further down into the soil that's going to be below the level of my crops, my vegetable crops roots. Usually speaking, vegetable crops do not have a very deep root system, and so it is able to bring that those nutrients back up to the soil surface, usually the top 2 to 3 inches of soil, and then when it decomposes, all those nutrients are now there, readily available for my next crop. Not to mention that any of these types of cover crops also allow for better water infiltration due to their roots penetrating the soil, and then when they die, their roots rot and they leave all these holes going through the soil where the roots were. All right, here's a picture of a silage tarp over a garden area. You can find silage tarps online. If you check out Farmer's Friend, it's an Adventist company up near Middle Tennessee. They have a lot of different agricultural supplies, ranging from silage tarps to high tunnels and other agricultural equipment. I have a number of their tools and supplies on my farm, and it's made my life a lot easier. All right, so if you are just starting out, it's springtime. Usually we have a lot of rain. So when it's raining or right after it's raining, especially if it's been raining for a little while, go outside and see what your yard or potential gardening area looks like. See if it's holding water. Is water ponding there? Is it running off? Is it infiltrating into the soil? These are all things that you want to find out before you go through all the effort of making your garden area and then finding out, oh great, this is the pond for the whole yard. It's better to know that ahead of time. Yes, you could go ahead and bring in topsoil or different types of amendments and raise the level of your yard in a certain area if you wanted to grow in that area, but usually it's just a lot easier to move your site a little bit out of the way. All right, we already talked about reading your soil results, or your soil test results, I should say. And if you don't understand what the results are saying, what type of nutrient do I need for nitrogen, calcium, etc., you can contact the soil lab, you can contact your agricultural extension agent, or you can go to your local co-op or talk to a farmer in your area and let them know what you're needing. Chances are they're going to know at least where you can get some if not all of your supplies. All right, springtime, early springtime, late winter. This is the perfect time of year to prune your fruit trees, prune your flowering bushes. You can start planting your tulips, your daffodils, gladiolus, anemone for a later spring flowering. If you are wanting to get your flowers in the ground now, you're wanting to get them or give them a little bit of a boost, you can plant them inside a tunnel. You can put landscape fabric or a black plastic down on the ground first, and then plant through this. It's going to cause the soil to heat up with the black plastic around it, and thereby give your plant a boost. If you find while you're pruning, planting, etc., any dead or dying or diseased parts of your plant, definitely go ahead and get rid of those. Throw them in the trash, don't burn them, don't add them to your compost pile, don't throw them off in the woods, because if there are any diseases still on the plant and whatnot, it will survive and potentially come back to haunt you another day. Definitely go ahead and get your tools ready. You don't want to start off the big day when you're going to be planting transplanting, etc., and find out that you're lacking a few tools, or you don't know where your tools are. So get them organized, clean them up, check your seed inventory. I have a number of seed catalogs up here from Baker Creek and Johnny's Selected Seeds. Feel free to take more than one, pass them out to your friends, neighbors, family, etc. But go ahead and start planting your seeds. You can plan to just have a spring garden and skip the summer heat. You can plan to have a spring, summer, and fall garden. But it's always good to know what's out there and be prepared for it. If you're wanting to have a long season of having a certain type of crop, let's say you really like kale or you really like squash or beans or whatnot, you're going to need to plan to have extra seeds so you can do a succession planting or multiple succession plantings of any particular crop. We'll go into that a little bit later on. And definitely, before you start planting, figure out what your plants need. Do they need full sun? Do they need partial shade? Do they need full shade? What do they need? This is especially true when you're dealing with certain types of flowers or maybe some other type of bedding plants. Okay, so that's a little bit blurry on the screen, but basically what this is showing, and you can look this up online and print off or download your own copies. This is a planting map or a planting timeline, shall we say. So basically, you know, in February/March, now is when you want to be planting or starting from seed, stuff like your lettuce, your kale, collard, Swiss chard, basically any of your greens. Now is when you want to be either seeding them, starting them in your trays, or transplanting them. I have kale and collard plants up here, as well as some herb plants that you're welcome to purchase after the seminar. But yeah, this is the time of year that you want to be doing that. You also want to be thinking ahead. April is going to be here in 4 weeks. Yippee. You want to be thinking about what you need to be starting come April. Usually for me, I try to have all of my spring crops already started and in the ground, either in March or the very beginning of April, so that way I can be focusing on getting my summer fields ready and getting my summer crops starting to get some of those in the ground by about middle to the endish of April. If the weather cooperates, maybe even a little bit earlier. So it's always a good idea to keep your eye on what the weather is saying, but also just have stuff ready in case the weather turns nice and you can get stuff out there. And also if it doesn't turn nice and we get a cold snap, you may want to have frost protection in place, especially if you are starting to put out some of your summer crops. Okay, so if you have been growing crops for a little bit of time in a particular garden area or a particular garden bed, you're going to want to do some crop rotation. Now this is a very simple image here of crop rotation, but basically if you're doing tomatoes in your first bed, next year you're going to want to plant carrots in the first bed. Year 3, you're going to want to change it to legumes. And so on and so forth. You can see the rest of the options that you have here up on the screen. Basically, when you are doing crop rotations, you want to make sure that the crop that is following whatever crop you are currently planting or was planted in this one bed or one section of your garden is of a completely different family. You do not want the same family of crops going in there. So, for example, if I plant tomatoes, I'm not going to follow tomatoes next year with peppers or eggplant in the exact same area because that's all part of the same family. I'm going to have to move things around a bit. You want to do this, you want to do this crop rotation for a number of different reasons. One, if you have disease or you have pests that really like your tomatoes and they have decided to make a home in this area, planting something completely different is going to take away their food source. So they're going to have to travel to actually find where you decide to put your tomatoes this year. Another reason is let's put it this way. Tomatoes are a heavy feeder. And so you're going to have to amend your soil no matter what you plant, but sometimes it's nice to give the soil a little bit of a break and put in a crop that isn't as heavy of a feeder, or takes a different type of nutrient. Sometimes you may plant a certain crop and it takes a lot of, let's just pick on nitrogen for example. It takes a lot of nitrogen out, but it leaves a lot of phosphorus in the ground. So then you can choose a different type of crop. Maybe it needs a lot of phosphorus, but not a lot of nitrogen. Again, refer back to your soil test. That's what I do constantly throughout the year. Okay, so winter, early spring, a lot of seed companies, they will sometimes run sales, discounts on seeds. Yes, they may give you a better discount if you buy bulk, but a lot of times, something that I figured out quite by accident with Johnny's is if I go ahead and I say, okay, I want to buy 5 seed packets of different seeds, and I put them in my cart, and then I quote, forget about it for a few days. Johnny's wants my business, so they'll send me a 5% off coupon, usually within the next day or two, as a incentive to come back and buy the seeds. So if you're not in a hurry, you have a few days to kill, you might just get a coupon. But yes, I use Johnny Selected Seeds, Rupp, Baker Creek, Osborne Seeds, Twilly Seeds. These are some of the companies that I buy from. There's nothing wrong with going to Ace, Walmart, Tractor Supply, and buying seeds from the seed racks that they have there. I've done that a number of times when I find myself in a pinch and need a few extra seeds. Those seeds always germinate for me, and I can't really tell a difference between what I was originally planting and these seeds. All right, if you run out of plant starts, if you have disease with some of your plants just die. Life happens. You can always go to local nurseries, friends, family members may have extra seeds, farmers in the area, especially at farmers markets or farm stands, they may have plants for sale, especially in the springtime, sometimes in the fall if you're wanting to do a fall garden, and so a lot of times you can purchase these plants for a bit cheaper than you can get them from the store. Make sure that you have enough pots, seedling trays, potting mixes, pro mixes. It's a really good one. It's what I use for the microgreens as well as for starting a lot of my seeds. Although occasionally I'll use something else. Let's see. Yeah, if you have a tunnel or greenhouses that you're going to be planting in or growing in, or just putting your seeds into to act as a germination chamber or a propagation house, definitely make sure that those are ready to be used. They're clean, you've got all your tables, you've got your watering set up, so that way everything is good to go. If you plant, especially in this area, if you wanted to plant some stuff in the fall, such as lettuce, kale, chard, pak choy, whatnot, if you get it started early enough, it will produce through the fall, winter, and early spring before it decides to go to seed, and you're going to have to go ahead and pull those out. But if you plant lettuce, you transplant lettuce seedlings into a high tunnel or another protected growing space. It doesn't have to be a high tunnel, it can be a low tunnel, covering a portion, a row, a bed of your garden area. You can have lettuce that looks like this in late winter. This is a Burgum's Green. Yes, that is over 12 inches in diameter. And I sold that at a farmer's market for $12. So the person that bought this head did not come back and see me for about 3 weeks. The lettuce lasted them a good long while. Yeah, I'll talk about that when I get to harvesting. But if you take care of your crops after you harvest them, they can last a very long time in your refrigerator, and we're talking weeks. So you don't have to use up a huge head of lettuce like that the day you buy it. Doing salad mixes, especially in the fall or in the early spring, it gives you some greenery to eat during the fall, winter, or early spring, And it also means that you don't have to worry about the pests coming in and bothering your salad mix. Usually for me, I can get salad mix in early in the spring, and then the pests just come in, and usually I have a little bit of a rough time of it as we get into the warmer months. But if I start it early enough, I can get a few harvests in without too much trouble. All right, so I know it's probably about 70 degrees outside today. It's probably going to be 70 degrees or a little bit higher. I think I saw 80 for my area later on this week. So definitely now is the time to get out there and get your crops in the ground, but we are the 1st of March. So don't forget, it could get cold out there again. We can get some freezes, hopefully nothing like what we had in January and February. That was way too cold for the south. But just be prepared, have a contingency plan for your crops. So some of those contingency plans could be having row covers over your crops. A lot of what you're seeing here in this picture is called Agribond. That is the white blanket sheet, if you want to call it that, that is laid over the crops. It can also be used as a insect deterrent, simply because you're placing a physical barrier between the crop and the outside world. Now, the one thing you want to be sure of when you are laying this Agribond over your crops, you want to make sure that if it is going to freeze, none of the Agribond or blanket is touching the crop itself, especially the leaves. It will freeze the crop in the area that it is touching. So, if you can put a stake, if you can get some wire and bend it and make some wire hoops and put that over your crops and then place the Agribond over that, that'll work well. Another thing that works well is if you really did a poor job of weeding and the weeds are taller than your crops, sure, go ahead and cover it. The weeds will act as your support, and if they freeze, so much the better. Yes, I've done that before. But anyway, yes, these are some options for you. If you do have a structure that you're growing in, sometimes, especially if it's going to get super cold, especially for a prolonged period of time, you will still want to cover your crops that are growing in the structure, in your high tunnel, your greenhouse, etc. It just simply gives them an extra layer of protection. So, for example, if you have a high tunnel or a greenhouse that you're growing in, that structure by itself in the wintertime is going to give about 5 to 8 degrees of warmth inside the structure. If you add a low tunnel, which is basically what you're seeing here, with the Agribond and the hoops tossed over plants, but you do it inside your high tunnel, you're looking at about another 2 to 3 degrees of added warmth for your plants. And sometimes that can make all the difference between your plants surviving and not having any frost burn and losing a crop. All right, so I've talked a good bit about seed starting. If you're going and looking at trying to start some flowers, maybe some vegetable plants, or even some herbs, but especially herbs in this particular instance, sometimes it's just easier to get plant starts instead of trying to start your own. I have a bunch of herbs that I'm trying to start from seed this year, and time is being a real pain as far as germination is concerned. I've had so-so luck with rosemary trying to do it from seed. So a lot of times I'll just go to a nursery and buy wholesale, either cuttings or small plugs, and then just propagate them, pot them myself. It costs a little bit more money, but for me it just means it's one less thing that I have to worry about in an already busy time of year. You can do heated benches or sections of heated benches, because sometimes, especially in the cooler months of the year, you need a little bit of heat to get your crops to germinate. Generally speaking, for me, I do not worry about putting grow lights over my crops because I'm putting them all out in the tunnel anyway to do germination, and so I don't worry about any extra light. If I'm doing it indoors, like especially with the microgreens, yes, those all have grow lights over them, and it's fairly temperature controlled in that room. And so I'm able to get a decent germination at that point. But yeah, with the heat mats, it doesn't matter if you're starting greens, if you're starting peppers, tomatoes, eggplant, squash, winter squash, watermelons, whatever. If it is March, April, maybe even a little bit into May, giving them a little bit of heat is definitely going to help. Now, as you can see from the picture here, these heat mats, depending on the length and the width, you may be able to put 1 to 2 trays on a heat mat. And generally speaking, with a heat mat, I see germination, what could be, let's say, takes a week. If I'm looking at summer crops, like your peppers and tomatoes, that could be down as low as 5 days, 4 days. Just depends on if you have all the right conditions to cause your crop to go ahead and germinate and start growing. And it definitely works very well for lettuce, kale, collards, etc. Usually heated benches or heated areas in your tunnels or your growing area, that is going to be some very prime real estate. So what I typically do, unlike what you see here in the picture, as soon as I see about 80, maybe 90% germination rate, as soon as those seedlings pop up out of the ground, I'm taking them off of the heat mat and my next round is going on them. If I have plenty of space, sure, I'll just leave them on the heat mat and just let them continue to grow. That does mean that I'm going to have to stay on top of my watering, because the heat mat providing extra heat is going to dry your trays out very quickly. And it can dry out your seeds very quickly, especially if they have just germinated. So that's something that you definitely want to keep in mind. If you're planning on going away for a weekend or whatnot, go ahead, turn off your heat mats or your heated table, and just let the seeds fend for themselves over the weekend, and then when you get back, turn it back on. Your seedling trays will not dry out as quickly. All right, fertilizing. So you can, it all depends on what type of crop you're going to be fertilizing. For all of them, you want to have a very balanced fertilizer. And generally speaking, for me, this is what I do once the growing season starts, or right before the growing season starts, to give the plants a little bit of a boost. So something like a 666 and 888, fish emulsion around trees and shrubs when you start to see new growth starting to come up. So for our area, generally speaking, that might be the end of March, maybe beginning of April. If you're doing something like blueberries, citrus, azaleas, or other crops like that that need a little bit more high acid in their diet, shall we say, you can go with pine needle mulch, or you can get some other types of high acid fertilizers to spread around these. Generally speaking, if I'm looking at my bushes, if I'm looking at my fruit trees or whatnot, I'm basically going to be giving them a boost of fertilizer maybe once a year, usually in the spring when they start to put on some extra growth. And then that's pretty much going to be it. I'm not going to worry about them from a fertilizing standpoint anymore. I'm just going to make sure that the plants are healthy, that I keep it well weeded, mowed around them, and then we're good to go at that point. Okay, so yeah, you just got started with your spring planting, your spring garden and whatnot. Start thinking about summer now. I know it might still get cold, but if you want to be the first one in your neighborhood to have tomatoes, to have sweet corn, to have summer squash, etc., you may want to be starting those sooner rather than later. And succession planting is always a good thing to keep in mind. If you want to try to be the first out of the gate with some of these crops, go ahead and start some now. But make sure you purchase extra seed, so that way if Mother Nature decides to hammer you, you can restart your seeds, or you have extra if she doesn't, and you can get your succession plantings going. Right now, I am planting onion plants. Garlic already went in the ground around late September or October. You can direct seed onions in the fall and get them to either spring onion size, or you can try to get them to bulb if they overwinter. I get my onion plants from Dixondale Farms. They're in Texas. They're probably one of the largest onion plant suppliers in the U.S. I don't typically use bulbs or sets for onions because I've never had good luck with them. They never end up bulbing for me, and sometimes they're just very dried out by the time I get them. So I found if I get the plants themselves, Dixondale, you can buy them by the bunch. A bunch will typically have 50 to 75 onion plants there. They sell onion plants, leek plants, and shallot plants. Each one of those coming in bundles or cases. So you can decide how many onions you want in your life. Onions, especially if you're doing them, especially if you're planting them as plants. As you can tell here from the picture, these are onions on this row over here, and I have leeks in the middle row. Those are about 2 weeks after transplant. So you can already see they're starting to put on some greenery, they're putting on some growth. All I do is I make my bed, it's a raised bed, and then I lay black plastic mulch over the top of it. And I go ahead and use a broad fork, which is like a really big pitchfork, to poke the holes, and then I just drop the onion plants down into the hole. If it's gonna rain, I don't worry about watering them. I usually give them about a week or so to get established, and then I hit them with fertilizer about once a week, once they get established, up until about a month before I'm gonna harvest, and then I kill the water and I kill the fertilizer. I let the plants just slowly start to dry out. But yeah, some of the easiest crops you can grow. For me, I usually order my onion, leek, shallot, whatever. If I'm going to do plants, I order them so that way they're going to be arriving roughly about the week of Valentine's, middle of February, and then I get them in the ground as quickly as possible. They can survive some frigid temperatures, no problem. If I do them that early, I can look at harvesting the first of my spring or the first of my bunching onions, sometimes as early as first, maybe the second week of April. So you can start having some spring onions, or some fresh onions, I should say, in your life a little bit earlier. If I'm going to wait and let them go to maturity, I'm looking at about a May to a very early June harvest if I'm waiting for bulb onions. If you plant a lot and you're waiting for them to bulb, make sure you are ready to harvest when they are ready to be harvested, because they will tell you when they're ready. You start to see the tops falling over, or they're turning yellow. Usually I wait until I start to see the leaves turning yellow before they fall over, and then I start to harvest, because if I leave them out in the field with their tops fallen over, basically the decay from the leaves is going to enter into the onion bulb, and my onions now have a much shorter lifespan than they should. But yeah, once you harvest them, just chop off the tops, chop off the roots, and then put them in a place where they can quote air dry for about a week or so. Just make sure it's not in direct sun, because that can burn them, especially in early June. But once they are dry, you can put them in a nice cool place in your house, and they should last you for a decent amount of time.
Can you talk a little bit about the distinction between short day and long day onions?
Let me get back to that.
Okay.
Okay, so as far as your herbs are concerned, herbs like rosemary, thyme, and oregano, you can start them by cuttings or seeds. Generally speaking, I like to do them via cuttings. Starting them from seed, it takes a long time to get them to germinate, and sometimes it never germinates for one reason or another. You can buy your herbs and pop them up in early spring, and then they can be transplanted outside once it gets to be a little more temperate of climate outside. But the beautiful thing about herbs, especially with thyme, oregano, and rosemary, those three, I try to have a very nice stand of each of these different herbs in my growing area. And then if I decide, okay, I'm ready to start some more plants of these, I just go ahead and start doing cuttings from them. My cuttings are generally maybe 3 inches long, and I try to strip off as much of the leaves as I can off of them before I stick them in my potting mix. And then I keep them out of direct sunlight. I keep it moist. I do not overwater it. You don't want your cuttings to be setting in water. Just keep the soil that they're in moist. And generally speaking, about a month or so later, they've already started to get roots forming, and you can go ahead and pull them out of their isolation. They can handle more sunlight and whatnot. And you have your next round of herb plants that you can either plant, sell, or give away. If you go to the farmer's market and you see that farmers have bunches of, bunches of basil for sale, you can go ahead and take the basil, strip off most of the leaves, stick it in some potting soil, and you can propagate your own basil plants, which will start to take root well within a week. And within a month, you've got a very healthy, very tall basil plant that you can transplant, or you can just start to harvest from. Okay, I'm going to quickly cover blueberry propagation here. You want to harvest or take your cuttings from the blueberries. Generally speaking, I do it in late fall, so generally about like October, maybe late September. You can also do it in the early spring before they start to leaf or bud out, but I just typically like to leave them alone in the spring, so I'm going to do it in the fall. You want to make sure that your cuttings are about 1/4 of an inch, and they're about 4 inches long. You want about 4 buds to be able to grow on your cuttings. You can start them in a mixture of peat, sand, and perlite. Usually I'll do a mixture of these three. And I'll also do some type of a rooting medium, and I'll let them soak in that for about 3 or 4 hours. And then I'm planting them at about 4 inches deep. And then I just kind of leave them alone and let them do their own thing. Some years I have really good luck, a lot of them take. Other years I have so-so luck. I haven't figured out why the difference between the two, but I always come away with at least some new blueberry plants. So it's definitely something that's well worth the time to try it out for yourself. And it's definitely a lot cheaper than going to buy new blueberry plants. I will say that with blueberry cuttings, they can take about 2 to 3 months to root. So they are a rather slower rooting. They have a rather slower rooting process. So just make sure that you keep the medium that they're growing in moist during this time, and make sure that any disease or whatnot is dealt with. AKA, you get rid of the plant if it gets too bad. If everything goes well. If you did do a spring cutting and transplanting and whatnot, they may be able to be transplanted by about August. It all just depends on what stage they're at. All right, so I already stated some about your spring starting of different crops. Usually, this first week of March is when I'm starting the first round of all my summer crops, simply because I do have heated tables and I have a greenhouse. You can still start them if you don't have either one of those. You can start them and keep them in your house, and then just take them outside during the day if it's going to be nice weather, and bring them in at night, or if it's going to be a heavy rainstorm. And you can have some summer crops that are ready to transplant by the end of April. Generally speaking, I'm trying to get my squash and cucumbers transplanted by about Earth Day. If you're wanting to get larger loads, or if you have a pickup truck, or a friend has a pickup truck, or a cart that you can pull behind a vehicle, I use Jackie Evans Trucking. They have a number of different soils, potting mixes, etc.
Mushroom compost.
Yes, they also have mushroom compost. I've actually found if you want to get a large amount of mushroom compost, it's actually cheaper if you order it in early December. If you wait until springtime, demand goes up and their price also goes up. Generally speaking, by about $100. Okay, so I'm going to take a few moments here to talk about seed starting and some of your seed starting mixes and whatnot. So I believe all of you got a handout, whether it was emailed to you or you picked up the handout. It basically has a potting mix recipe. This is from Floret Farms. They're a farm out in Oregon that mostly does flowers, but I got my hands on this soil recipe, if you want to call it that, and I've tried it out with seed starting, and it works out very well. Now, I will say I do not use this recipe for my microgreens. The microgreens, I just use straight ProMix. I do not add anything to it because the crops that I'm growing for microgreens, as you can see with the one tray on the table that is very densely planted, that is broccoli, and that is going to be harvested later on this week. And so when the seed first germinates, it has all the nutrients it needs to get the plant to about that stage, maybe a little bit bigger. If I am going to be seeding crops that are going to go out into the field, and I'm actually going to be harvesting the actual crop of them, whether they be greens, summer squash, etc., then I'm going to do some extra doctoring with the seed starting mix. So basically, as far as this recipe is concerned, you can get 1 bale of ProMix. It's about 3.8 cubic feet. You can either order this online, or if you go to Ace Hardware, you can purchase a bale there. And you can order more, you can purchase more than 1 bale at a time if you need so. But generally a bale will do a lot of trays. I'm starting my seeds in about 50, maybe 72 cell trays. And I can do a lot. I haven't tried to measure out how many trays I can do per bale, but I know it's a lot. So anyway, going back to this recipe, so you want your ProMix. Generally speaking, I am going to have like a very large container, like a water trough that I'm going to dump in some of my ProMix. You can do, and then I mix in some compost. Usually I'm going to mix in either some mushroom compost that's been very well aged, very well composted, or I may do like a leaf compost if I took the time to gather a bunch of leaves in the fall and I've let them decompose over the winter. And then I'm going to be adding 6 cups of bone meal, 3 cups of kelp meal, and about 2 1/4 cup of blood meal. You can also use fish emulsion, feather meal, soybean meal, or alfalfa meal if you wanted to substitute any of these items in this recipe. Primarily, you have the bone meal in there for calcium, you have the blood meal in there for nitrogen. And so your feather meal, your fish emulsion, or your alfalfa meal can be substituted for either the bone or the blood meal. But make sure when you are doing your mixing, you're making this recipe, make sure that you mix everything in very well. You don't want to have clumps of any one of these things and not have it thoroughly mixed in. So I have a large water trough that I will use to mix everything into, and I just get a shovel and I try to stir everything, flip it over a few times, and then once I feel it's been well mixed, I go ahead and start filling up my trays and start seeding. And as you can see in the picture that's above this recipe, you can see what they did when they just did straight ProMix and fertilizer, and then the ProMix recipe that you see here. The plants definitely responded a lot better to the recipe in terms of their size and their growth prior to transplanting. And that's what you really want to do. If you're going to be transplanting a crop that you've started from seed, you want to make sure that your crop has the best starting life from seeding to transplanting. All right, transplanting. So generally speaking, transplanting is going to happen about 3, maybe 4 weeks after you have started your seeds. Now, if you're starting your seeds in February, January, or December, expect that to be lengthened. You're not going to get that same short time frame because it's colder, but more importantly, your daylight length is way too short during December and January. So that's when you'd want to have some grow lights on your crops, or just expect to sit back and let nature take its course at a slower pace. Thank goodness we're about to have time change. Not that that affects a lot in the daylight scheme, but at least it's lighter later, so when we get home from work, we can get outside and do more stuff. I am going to, once my seedlings germinate, I am going to hit them with fertilizer. Generally speaking, I start doing that every 4 days once they have emerged. I want to make sure that I'm giving them all the nutrients that they need. You want to make sure that your plants are kept weed-free. And you're going to want to make sure that you harden your plants off before they go out into your garden. Generally speaking, you do that by putting them outside for a few hours every day and lengthening that time. Generally speaking, I'm going to do this about a week to 2 weeks before I'm going to be transplanting them out in the field. And if your transplants look like what is on the table and you see it's going to rain, don't worry about it. Let them take a beating. It's going to strengthen the plants, their stems, their leaves and whatnot, and that's what they need, because once you transplant them out there, you're not going to be grabbing them and bringing them back indoors every time it rains. So it's just helping the plants out. And definitely make sure that you water your transplants before you transplant them, and you water them after you transplant them. Generally speaking, when I'm watering after transplant, they're also getting a dose of fertilizer. All right, so I've talked a good bit about fertilizing. This is what I'm using, 1248-8 plant starter fertilizer when I'm starting my seeds. This is what I'm hitting them with every 4 days. And sometimes, especially after I have transplanted them, I will hit them with fertilizer about 3 to 4 times a week, just to make sure they're getting the boost that they need, so that way I can get the plant to grow faster, not to mention bigger. And here's a picture of some of the transplants getting ready to go out. Okay, so this one actually turned out a lot better than the other screenshot that I took. But this slide here basically shows you your time frame for when you can plant or have certain crops. So for beans, you can have them, let's just say the very beginning of April, the very end of March. You can start transplanting them, and you can have beans all the way through the middle of October. Typically, the middle to the end of October is when we're going to have our first major hard frost, in which case all of your summer crops are going to be done. So you want to plan for that and make sure that your crops can hopefully be harvested before the heavy winter freeze kills them. Now, stuff like beets, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, carrots, kale, lettuce, etc. They can be grown in the spring. They can tolerate some simple kale, lettuce. Okay, cool. Getting to hear it twice. Repetition, ingrainment, right? So yes, your crops can take a little bit of a cold snap when you transplant them in the spring, and they can definitely take the cold after they have been hardened off and transplanted again in the late fall slash early winter. If you're going to be doing a fall garden, you want to be starting your seeds sometime around the end of July to the beginning of August. Yes, it is blazingly hot outside. You may have to bring your seedlings or seeds indoors so they will germinate in a cooler temperature, and then put them outside. You'll also want to make sure that any pests that are outside are not going to be devouring your seedlings, because they are trying to eat everything in sight as we get closer to the fall. But transplanting in early fall will give your crops enough time to get about 3/4 grown by the time the daylight hours change, and that means that you will be able to harvest your crops hopefully throughout the majority of the fall and the winter. Typically speaking, I've noticed in the last several years that we tend to get a really cold snap sometime in January, sometime in early February or so, and so you may lose your crops at that point in time, even with a lot of extra protection on them. Sometimes it just, things happen. But at least you are able to have fresh greens through the majority of the winter, and then you can restart as we get closer to spring. Okay, weed management. You want to make sure that you kill your weeds the sooner the better. So typically speaking, if I've already transplanted my crops, or if I have direct seeded crops and they're just starting to germinate, even if I don't see any weeds coming up, I am probably going to take a hoe and drag it across the ground near where my transplants or my seeds were planted, just to stir up the soil. Anything that may be germinating is going to get disturbed, and that's my main purpose. Any plant that is just started to germinate, if you cause disruption to it, chances are it is not going to survive. So that's what you want to do. If you want to try to avoid doing a lot of weeding, which I think probably everybody here does, you can do a number of different things. Primarily, keep your ground covered. This is going to be important for a number of different reasons. A, if your ground is covered, you are going to prevent water or wind erosion from your bare soil. Number two, you're going to be able to keep the soil warmer or cooler, depending on the time of year, if it is covered. You're keeping the weeds at bay. You can do this by putting down a weed mat. That can be a black plastic mulch. That could be ground cover. I usually use DeWitt ground cover, and then I'll burn holes in it to put my plants in. You can use hay, straw, wood chips. I think that's everything I usually use. But you do want to make sure, if you're using the straw or you're using the hay, make sure it is weed free. You don't want to sow your own lawn. Believe me, that is very heartbreaking. You want to make sure that when you're putting down these different, let's call them amendments for your soil, that they are thick enough, especially if you're using the hay or the straw or the wood chips. Typically speaking, I'm looking at about 4, maybe 5 inches down my beds. You're doing it this thick to make sure that any weeds that germinate, they have a really tough time coming through all this matter that is put down on top of them. And you're going to be walking on top of it as well, which also helps to cause disruption to their growing. If you want to put down a living walkway, a living pathway, I found that white clover does very well, because once it is established, you can walk on it, you can put a lot of heavy foot traffic on it, you can push wheelbarrows over it, etc., and it takes a beating and keeps on growing. It's not going to disintegrate into the soil. And you can also try tarping your garden as a whole, the entire thing, like I showed you at the very beginning of this lecture, and leave the tarp on there. Now, if you tarp it now, let's say March 1st, typically speaking, you're going to be looking at about 6 to 8 weeks that you're going to want to leave that tarp on there, because we're not very hot. Once summer hits, if you're wanting to do the same thing, you can leave it on there for about 4 weeks, and it's going to kill pretty much everything that's growing underneath it, or anything that may try to grow. Now, when you're tarping, it is best if you use what's called a silage tarp. Silage tarp has one side that is white, one side that is black. You want the white side facing your ground. You want the white side touching your soil, or if you're covering an area that you're going to plant into later, your grass. That is because the white is going to help reflect a little bit of light, and that is going to cause germination to happen of any weed or grass seeds that are in there. The black is what's up facing towards the sun. That is going to be very hot. It's going to be accumulating a lot of heat, and the heat plus the darkness is what is going to be killing or stopping the growth of your weed seeds. So pretty effective. You can even go ahead and add, if you're going to be doing like your straw or your hay, you can put that down in the area and then cover it, and just allow it to kind of compost and decompose under your tarp. It's not tarp and then do your amendments, although you can do that too. Okay, so this one here is a picture of some common weeds that we have. A lot of times when it comes to weeds, the weeds are simply an indication of what's going on in your soil. They're not an indication of something bad necessarily. It just tells you, hey, take a look at this, amend this, pay attention to what's going on. A lot of weeds, if you add calcium or lime to your soil, it helps to balance out the soil's pH level, and certain weeds or grasses will just stop growing because the soil pH has been changed so much, and it's simply not a conducive environment for growth for them anymore. So you can find this picture as well as many others online for what you can do for your area. It kind of tells you a bit about the weeds and what it takes to set them back. All right, pest control. Oh, we don't need to cover pest control, right? Everybody knows what to do. We'll just skip on, right? No, just kidding. All right, so I have a few slides dedicated to pest control, and generally speaking, what I am doing with pest control is something called integrated pest management. Is that a familiar term for somebody here? Have you heard that before? Okay, one, maybe two. All right. So basically, integrated pest management is working with nature, but you're following a principle of first you're going to be using physical controls, then biological, then chemical. So what I've always found as far as pest control is I'm going back to my soil test. I'm making sure that my soil has all the nutrients and amendments and minerals that it needs to stay healthy, because your soil feeds your plant then feeds you. If your plant cannot get the right nutrients it needs from the soil, your plants are going to be stressed. And maybe it's not just because of the nutrients. Maybe it's because your soil is too wet and the plant can't live in a marsh. So whenever plants are stressed, they send out pheromones, letting the world know that they're stressed, something wrong is happening. And your pest insects, which depending on how you view them, may not actually be a pest, they pick up on these pheromones, and your pests are actually nature's cleanup agents or tools. So they come in and they start eating plants that are diseased, that are stressed, that have any type of issue. So whenever you see pests infiltrating your garden, start looking and seeing what you need to fix, what you can do to amend the problem. Because if you amend the problem, I guarantee you those pests are going to disappear. They're going to go elsewhere, because pests do not attack or bother healthy plants. All right, so your physical controls, it may be that you put an insect netting over your plants. Typically speaking, if I'm going to be doing this, I'm going to transplant, and then I'm going to immediately cover, and I'm going to leave that covering on them until if it's a summer crop, until they start to bloom, and then I have to remove that cover because I need my beneficials coming in there to pollinate the blooms. If it is greens, then I don't have to do that. I can just keep them covered. I just have to uncover them every time I go out to harvest. You can screen in your greenhouse or your high tunnel and prevent insects from coming in there. Sometimes it's a matter of I'm getting too stressed because I'm too hot. The sun is baking me, so sometimes I have to put, instead of an insect netting, or maybe on top of an insect netting, I'm putting a shade cloth over my greenhouse, or I'm putting some stakes out there and I'm putting a shade cloth over my field-grown crops. Sometimes just a little bit of a cooler temperature can really help your plants. You can put plants or flowers that attract beneficial insects, or you can even put plants out there that attract your pests and use that as a trap crop or a sacrificial crop. Hopefully the trap crop is going to attract the insects because that's going to be more appealing to them than some of your other crops, and you just leave them alone, let them eat that, and you can usually get a harvest of some of your other crops that sometimes would be really impacted. One of the crops that I like to plant, whether it's around the edge of my garden or maybe I'll do like a dedicated row to them, is going to be marigolds. I've had really good luck planting them with my eggplants, my tomatoes. Sometimes you can put onions around certain crops and that helps to deter other pests. The one thing I will say about marigolds is if you water them, fertilize them, you treat them right, they get very big. So I don't recommend trying to plant an eggplant and then trying to plant a marigold plant right next to it in the same row. Your marigold plant will probably take over and start to become a weed to your eggplant. Yes, I did that one year. I had to severely cut back the marigold plants in order to have my eggplant actually survive and produce, which the marigold was fine. It took the cutting back no problem. Just an FYI. All right, you can physically pull the insects off. Now, I'm thinking especially of squash, summer squash, winter squash. You're probably going to have a problem with your cucumber beetles, maybe your squash beetles, squash bugs. With the squash bugs, especially when it's the start of the season, you may only see a couple of them, hopefully easy to kill, but you're going to see that they're going to start laying eggs in profusion. If you can destroy the eggs, you can limit or maybe even stop the infestation before it even gets started. But you have to be inspecting your plant. That means you have to be out there monitoring what's going on in your garden every single day. You take a day off, sometimes an infestation can seem to explode overnight because that one day was all it needed for the eggs to hatch or other things to start happening, other insects to come in. But typically speaking, if you just monitor what's going on in your fields, sometimes, if you just have a small amount of pests in your field, in your garden, your raised bed, whatever, it may not be the end of the world. It may just be, they're passing through, or there's just a few of them. For me, typically, if it's just a few of them, I'm not overly concerned about them. I'm keeping an eye on the situation. Yes, I'm going to kill them if I get the chance, but I'm not overly worried. If my plants are healthy, generally speaking, I have nothing to worry about. For squash bugs, something that I found that works really well is if I put some smaller pieces of cardboard, 2x4s, or plywood around the plants during the day or in the evening, the bugs are going to go into there to try to find protection, shelter during the night. And if I get out there early enough in the morning, chances are I can find a decent amount of the squash bugs under there and kill them in rapid succession. Now, something that a friend told me about last year, which I found out actually works pretty decently, is don't plant to the edge of your field or your garden area. Give it some space. Typically speaking, for me, I'm leaving about 3 feet of bare dirt or covered area if I'm doing like a plastic mulch or a ground cover between where I'm planting my crop and where the start of my field is, or the edge of my field. I'm leaving a dead space around there. I'm also making sure that my yard or the outside of my perimeter of my field is mowed very, very short. I'm keeping it mowed. The reason for this is a lot of insects, whether they're beneficial or they're pests, they use grasses, shrubs, etc. To live, to hide, etc. And if you remove that habitat from right there close to your field, it means that they have to go farther through uncovered territory, which exposes them to be eaten by their own predators. So it's a simple way that maybe it'll make your area look a little nicer, not having the weeds and whatnot growing up right next to your garden area. But it also means that the pests won't be able to get in as close with protection. It's not a foolproof method, it's not going to stop everything, but it's just another deterrent that you can use. Alright, so you can use soapy water to kill some of your insects, specifically if you're pulling them off, you can just drop them into a bucket. You can spray neem oil on your plants, it also acts as a deterrent. Diatomaceous earth, BT are two powders that are made out of really tiny crustaceans that come from the sea that you can spread over your leafy greens or any of your summer crops that are being eaten by caterpillars or beetles or bugs or whatnot. Diatomaceous earth and BT I've found works really well when you're dealing with your caterpillars, like your cabbage moths, your tomato hornworms, or I'm forgetting the one that goes onto corn. But basically any soft body insect, if it gets this powder on them, the powder microscopically starts to cut them up. If they eat it, it starts to cut them up from the inside out. It's a rather gruesome death, but I say they deserve it. Yes, I've lost a few crops to pests. These are all considered organic ways that you can deal with pests. Now, with everything that I've just mentioned on this slide, if it rains, if you have a heavy dew in the morning, chances are you're going to have to reapply. So you're looking at reapplication at least once a week, sometimes more depending on how much moisture gets on the plants, because it will wipe it off, and then your plants will be exposed. You could also, this may sound strange, but you can also dip or scatter, I believe it's called kaolin clay, over your plants. It simply acts as another deterrent, a physical barrier between your plant and anything that is going to try to eat it. The best time to apply any type of these powders or sprays on your plant is going to be in the evening or maybe first thing in the morning. Especially with diatomaceous earth, it is a nondescript killer. So if your beneficials get it on them or whatnot, it will also kill the beneficials. So doing it early in the morning or in the evening while the flowers of the plant are not open means that you don't have, you don't run as high a risk of it getting into the flower and then getting onto the beneficials and they come pollinate the flower. I hate to break it to you, but sometimes you do have to stop growing certain crops if you have a very bad infestation of a pest. You can maybe move it from the front yard to the backyard or maybe to a side yard or whatnot, but if you just have too much of a pest problem, yeah, sometimes you just have to stop for a year or two. Making sure that your plants are properly fertilized throughout their growing season. Sometimes it may mean that you have to change how you're fertilizing, which means, okay, maybe before the plant was blooming, I'm giving it a lot of nitrogen to grow the leaves of the plant, but then now that it's starting to flower, now that it is getting ready to start fruit production, maybe I'm going to change it to doing more of a heavier magnesium fertilizer during flower production, and then I'm maybe going to go back to something like a triple 20 fertilizing while the fruiting is happening. If you spend all the time growing plants, you want to make sure that when they get to fruit production, you're actually getting the best bang for your buck, which usually means give them as much fertilizer as the plant can tolerate during the growing season if need be, so that way you get a very nice harvest. All right, one thing I wanted to touch on really quickly before we move on from pests is towards the end of the crop's lifespan, you are typically going to see more pests coming in because the plant is dying at that point. It is run its course, it's hopefully giving you a very good harvest, and as it starts to die, it's sending out some stress pheromones, the pests are coming in simply to clean nature up. Now, you can avoid this by either having a succession planting, so your next planting is coming on, so you go ahead and you rip out the original planting of the crop before they start to die, before the pests start to really make themselves known. Or you can just do a final harvest of your crop and say, okay, I'm done with this crop, now I'm going to move on to something else. Typically, this may happen towards like a change of the season or something like that. All right, chemically dealing with pests, I don't typically use these, but you can use Sevin. It is a very nice killer of things, but you have to use it with caution, especially with your beneficials. And malathion kills a lot of your soft-bodied insects, such as your cabbage worms and other soft-bodied insects that may come after your spring or your fall greens, especially in late summer. So if you want to go the chemical route, here are two options for you, but use it judiciously. All right, harvesting. So you spent months, maybe at this point, babying your plants along, hoping that they survive everything that nature throws at them, and now they are producing. So there's a few things you want to keep in mind here. You want to make sure that any produce that is harvested, typically speaking, you want to keep it in a cooler place. So about 38 to 45 degrees is a good general range for things. So if you're going to be putting, let's say greens, if you're looking at the spring, greens should be put in a plastic bag in the crisper box, or you can put it in a paper bag, lightly close it up and also put it in your crisper box. Your tomatoes, your peppers, okra, all that stuff can stay out on your counter. It does not need to go in your refrigerator. Now, a quick story. I showed you that big head of lettuce earlier in the presentation. The lady that bought that, she got it, she went home, and I didn't see her for about 3 weeks. She came back and she's like, hey, I bought that big head of lettuce. Yeah, I remember. Well, I put it in my refrigerator. Like you said, I put it in a bag and I put it in the crisper box. I don't open my refrigerator that often. I forgot about it. I was like, okay. Is it still good, or should I just go ahead and chuck it and buy another head today? I told her, no. More than likely, the head is probably going to be fine. It may look slightly wilted. It has been out of the ground for 3 weeks, but you've kept it in a cool place. Go ahead and pull it out. Give it an ice bath. So get the biggest bowl you have, fill it up with cool water, throw a bunch of ice cubes in there, and stick it in there, let it get thoroughly wet, and you're probably going to see that it's going to come back to life. You can even carve off a bit of the stem to give it a fresh cut, a fresh break down there, and just see what happens. Okay, she goes home. She didn't buy another head of lettuce. I see her a couple weeks later. Hey, I did what you said. It came back to life. That head looked just like when I bought it from you. Hey, that's great. What'd you do with it? I wasn't ready to eat it, so I put it back in the refrigerator. Yeah, now we're looking at 4 to 5 weeks. So, long story short, she did end up eating it, I think around week 5. She did give it, I think, 2 more ice baths in between that time period, but the head of lettuce was perfectly fine. It had not started to rot, and it was perfectly edible. So, simple things like that you can do to elongate the shelf life of your crops can do a world of good for them and for you. And a lot of times, when you're looking at lettuce, kale, collards, maybe beets, turnips, stuff like that, if you start to see them to wilt a little bit, sometimes just sticking them in water, similar to the way you would do a bouquet of flowers, can help them rejuvenate a little bit. So there's a picture of some of the crops I've harvested. Yeah, yeah, making sure that you take care of the crops after harvest is just as important as taking care of the plants and the crops pre-harvesting. All right. Before I go ahead and take questions, up here on the slide you can see a number of different agricultural books. Feel free to take a picture of them. You can find a lot of these books either on Amazon or maybe at McKay's or some other used bookstores. They're usually a little bit cheaper than some of those other places than if you buy them brand new. But a lot of them, especially the Knott's Handbook for Vegetable Growers or Sustainable Market Farming, or Elliott Coleman's Four Season Harvest. Those are some of the books that I return to month after month, season after season. If I'm having issues, if I'm wanting to refresh my memory on certain crops or whatnot, they work out very well. And then I also have some weed books and pest books up there as well that have come in handy more than once. The book that says 2015, that is the Southern U.S. 2015 Vegetable Crop Handbook. You can get that from your local extension agent. They put out a new edition every year, so you can get the 2026 version. Probably here in another few months, you may still be able to get the 2025 version. But that one specifically is geared for our region. Yes, it is going to tell you everything under the sun for all the different types of crops that you can grow here for our area. So even if you're not a farmer, if you're not into agriculture in a big way, it'll still help you on a smaller scale. So. All right, are there any questions?
So, you always hear people talking about heirloom seeds. What is that and why do we want that?
Okay, so heirloom seeds. Okay, so how I'm going to start this is if you go, so I have Baker Creek catalogs here. Pretty much all of their seeds are going to be heirloom. Heirloom seeds basically mean if you're growing a tomato from an heirloom seed, let's say it's Cherokee Purple. Once that tomato is harvested, you can save the seeds from them, and you can reseed from those seeds either that year or the next year, and it's going to come back true to form. It's going to be that same heirloom Cherokee Purple tomato. It's going to be different than if you were to use like a hybrid variety, because the hybrid has probably been crossed a few times, and it may not come back exactly as what it came out the first time. So if you came out, let's say for example, if Cherokee Purple was a hybrid tomato, you saved the seed from it and then you replanted that, instead of getting a Cherokee Purple tomato, you may get a cherry tomato, or you may get a yellow tomato, simply because it's not going to be true to form. But if you're growing heirloom, you're going to get true to form tomatoes every time.
Also, I planted some little giant arborvitaes last year.
A little what?
Little giant arborvitaes around the little sunshine.
Okay.
If I wanted to give them a little treat to make it more vibrant.
What type of crop is that? I'm not familiar with.
It's a bush, right?
Oh, it's a shrub. Okay.
But it's like round, small shrub.
Okay.
But I just planted last summer, and I wanted to be, as healthy as
Yeah.
possible.
I would go ahead and probably.
What's
Sorry?
the question? Can you repeat the question?
Oh, repeat the question.
Okay. So last summer, I planted some little giant arborvitae, and I was trying to figure out how to give them a little treat to make them as healthy as possible.
So basically, in that regard, if you're just trying to get them a boost for the upcoming season, I would just give them like a really basic general purpose fertilizer. Considering that it's like a bush or whatnot, let's say this is your shrub right here, I would probably, instead of putting the fertilizer like right here at the base, its roots have probably expanded a little bit around it. So I would be putting the fertilizer like maybe like a foot, 2 foot around the outside of the bush, and just letting it slowly, work its way into the soil at that point. You may even be able to water in the fertilizer after you give it. So that way it just helps the decomposition of the fertilizer down into the soil.
Is it good to plant the seeds after the expiration date? And if it's okay, how much longer can you plant that seed after its expiration date?
That's a nice question. You're going to be best off if you can do all your planting of the seeds the year that you get them. Typically speaking, you might be able to get halfway decent germination on something that's 2, maybe 3 years old. It just depends on the type of crop, where you got the seed, etc. For example, I grow a lot of okra during the summer. I have been able to grow okra from seed that's about 5 years old. Every single one of those okra plants came up. I turned around and tried to do that with squash. Out of a 50 cell tray, I think I had about 15 plants. So, me personally, I think it is just based on the type of crop that it is going to be how good or how bad your germination rate is. Typically speaking, if I have old seed that I want to use up, I will put it in like a 10 by 20 tray, like the microgreens are in, and I'll just sow it rather thickly. That way, if it comes up, great. Then I just have to go ahead and separate the seeds and then transplant them into a 50 cell pot or individual pots. If nothing comes up, I'm out 5-10 minutes of my time, and I'm not trying to individually seed each seed into a hole.
And if it grows, it'll be fine, it won't be a defective plant.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm just saving myself extra trouble if it doesn't. But yes, if it does, hey, that's great.
Lab testing, the cost of lab testing the soil.
It's not very much. If a lot of times, if you go through the extension agent or your extension in your county or your town or whatnot, a lot of times those will be for free.
Oh.
Now, that may not be as detailed of a test as if you were to actually send it to a lab. If you actually send it to a lab, like waters, I just do like a standard test. I'm not trying to go super deep. But those tests generally run me somewhere between maybe $15 to $30 on average. The price may have gone up a little bit, but yeah, it's not a huge expense.
Blueberries. I'm having trouble with my blueberries with the pH factor. I'm kind of new to understanding pH, so it's new to me. I planted 8 blueberry bushes in December, and I just found out 3 days ago that it's a 7.5 is what my soil is, and it's supposed to be between 4.5 and 5.5. Any chance of getting that down? Now, I did put pine needles down when I planted them over the winter, and I did use, because I thought it would work, from my little understanding, ammonium sulfite. Any chance that will pull it down before the season this year?
No.
Thought so.
Yeah, if you have that big of a difference in your pH, it's going to take more than one season for it to work down. Now, what I would try doing, I mean, you've already listed what you did, so I would keep applying your pine needles, keep applying, a high acidic fertilizer to it, and keep testing your soil. You're probably looking at 2, maybe 3 years, before you start to notice a really big effect of a lowering of the pH.
Is this a common problem?
Yeah, it's pretty common for our area.
Can you transplant microgreens into an outdoor garden? Okay,
No.
thank you.
No, it is, as you can tell, from the tray here, I sowed a lawn. You're not transplanting that. You're not separating that. That's not the purpose of a microgreen. Now, it is true that this is broccoli. It is true that the same seed that I used to do microgreens, I can take and seed into a 50-cell tray, into a single-cell tray, whatever, and I can grow broccoli plants from the same seed.
So I can use my microgreen seeds in the garden?
Yes. The only caution I would give you is make sure that the type of broccoli that you're planting is going to be good for this area. We tend to get hot very quickly. We tend to have a lot of high humidity. And if by chance your broccoli, let's say the variety was something that does better up in the northeast or the northwest or whatnot, it may not actually form a head here. Versus if you were up there, it would probably form a head. So just something to keep in mind. You may want to check your variety before you start planting. But you can still eat the broccoli leaves.
Seth,
Yes.
so incredible presentation.
Thank you.
Got a question. You see, a lot of us out here are pretty old. Is there any way we could get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation that you have done?
Yeah.
Whether it's paid for or whatever. It's
Yeah,
just
I
been
can-
great.
I can give Sylvia a copy of it.
We will upload the video on our YouTube page.
Oh, cool.
What about turmeric and
Yes.
My question is, what zone is Hickson, Tennessee? For instance, or Middle Valley. Sometimes I open seats and it says zone D, B, numbers. How do I find out?
You can do a Google search. Like you could put in, let's say for example, you did a Google search of what zone is Chattanooga, Tennessee. Just keep it generic for right now. And that will give you a result. But we are in 7B. I'm in technically zone 8. But there's not a lot of difference between 7B and 8. Yeah.
Okay, so Seth, you said you fertilized your plants every 4 days. Is that just for a short period of time, or will that burn them after a while?
Okay, so yes, I am fertilizing every 4 days once they have germinated, and those are my seedlings. So
Okay.
from the time they germinate to when they look like this, they're getting fertilized every 4 days. Maybe I'll knock it down to like twice a week. But I want them to be very healthy and very dark before I transplant them. Once I transplant these, yes, I'm going to give them a dose of fertilizer at transplanting, and then I am going to back off, and they're going to be getting, I can still give them foliar applications, which is a fertilizer, which is how they've been getting that, or I can go through my drip system, which is typically how they're going to get them from here on out, which is going to be sending the fertilizer directly to the roots.
Sorry, I have another question.
Yeah.
You said that you have not had much luck with onion sets, that you buy the plants.
Yes.
How are the plants different than the sets?
Okay, so your sets basically look like really small onion bulbs. The plants basically look like a very small green onion. It is a stem, you got your greenery, you've got your tiny little onion ball, if you wanna call it that, at the base, and you got your roots there. So it's just the plant versus a set, and then I just drop that into the ground.
What do you recommend for a raised bed to replenish the soil, adding more? Because every year it goes lower and you have to add more. What do you recommend using?
You're talking about the level of the soil? Okay. There's a number of different things you could do. One, you could collect all the leaves in your yard and just add that, and that's gonna decompose and it's gonna add some nutrients as well as add to the level.
When you clean everything out, what do you think?
Right, yeah, this is if you just have a bare bed, there's nothing planted in there. So that's one option. Another option is you can get some mushroom compost, add that in there. You could put any other type of compost in there as well, mix it in. Or you can do just a combination of all three. You can do leaves, you can do mushroom compost, other types of compost, cow manure, horse manure, different things like that. Yeah, I would just mix it in there. I typically will try to do that at the end of my growing season, so like in late fall or in the winter. If you're looking at the spring needing to do that, still go ahead and do that. I would probably try to skip out on some of the manures right now, just because they may be a little hot and that could burn your seedlings or your plants. But yeah, just typically I just do it in the fall so that way it has that time to just rot, decompose and whatnot. But yeah.
Excuse me, she's talking about a raised bed. We're talking about doing that, but there's woods around us which has squirrels, chipmunks, a lot of varmints. Would you recommend doing that, and would they eat all our vegetables in our garden? Or would you even know? Because I know yours is all open fields.
No, I've got my fair share of this. Yes, you do run the risk of having squirrels, groundhog, rabbit, etc. coming in and visiting. Typically speaking, I don't have that much trouble with rats and mice coming in and eating the plants or the seeds that I've direct seeded into the ground, whether it's a raised bed or out in my field. If you're dealing with moles or voles, you can go to Tractor Supply or someplace similar to that. Go to the back where they have their pest section, where they have their traps and whatnot. I think typically around this time of year, maybe fast forward to like late March, April. I don't know what they're called, but it's to get rid of moles, voles, and I think it works pretty decently with rats and mice too. It's basically, you can get it either battery powered or solar powered, but it's basically a vibrating stick that you stick into the ground and it emits a vibration. I think you can set it to do it like every minute, every 5 minutes or whatnot, and that constant, quote, quote, vibration is going to drive away your moles, your voles, and I think it doesn't drive away your rats and your mice. As far as like tunneling into the ground and having nests and burrows near your plants, simply because that constant vibration and constant noise that they're feeling under the ground is not conducive to their habitat, and so they're going to find someplace else to go. Typically speaking, I'll do 2 sticks. I'll do them like at opposite ends of my garden area, raised bed, whatever, and the vibrations, they kind of start to interlap because I have 2 of them, and it kind of just covers the whole area. I had either moles or voles, one of the 2, coming in and decimating my strawberry crop one year. So I did that, and I had a strawberry crop. So.
How can you best help me? I have 7 blueberry bushes, but they're in pots, containers, real large round containers. What do I do? How do I fertilize it? Do I use cottonseed oil, not cottonseed oil, but cottonseed meal, or is that what you call it? Mushroom?
Yes.
Okay, fertilizer. Do I use that? because I don't plan on putting them in the ground anytime soon. So I'm gonna keep them in the pots. How do I keep it healthy to produce blueberries soon? I bought them last year.
Okay.
They're still in the pot. They've gone through the winter. I haven't gone out to literally look at them and see what it looks like. But I don't know what is supposed to happen over the winter. Do we prune it now, or was I supposed to prune it in October?
October. Right now, especially with how warm it is and how warm it's going to continue being, I would not try doing any pruning. I would just leave it alone because the chances are you're going to be pruning off this year's production, at least some of it. As far as fertilizing and whatnot, typically with bushes and fruit trees, you don't have to fertilize them as much. You could do, like you were saying, your cottonseed mixture. You could put that on there. Probably what I would do is just give them a dose of like a general purpose fertilizer. If you go to Ace, Lowe's, Home Depot, you know, some of these other garden centers, maybe even a nursery, you can talk to them and see if they have a specific fertilizer geared towards blueberries. But yeah, that's typically all you need to do. It's just like a general purpose. Give it that, like in the spring, right before they start to flower, bud, whatever, and they should be good. I know for our blueberries, I mean, they're in the ground. We don't typically do much with them. We'll try to get them mulched every few years whenever we get a chance to, but that's pretty much it. And I mean, the berry plants themselves, bushes, are fairly robust, and they're able to gather nutrients from the soil. So we haven't noticed a decrease or a detrimental effect because we haven't given them extra fertilizer or whatnot. But it may be a little bit different with them being in pots. So.
What about wood chips versus rubber chips?
Wood chips versus what?
Rubber chips, rubber.
Rubber.
Mulch, rubber mulch.
I have never heard of rubber mulch. Okay. I can only speak about wood chips. Yes, I have used wood chips around blueberries before, and I mean it works pretty good. Again, just like what I was saying about with your compost, if you're putting it down in a raised bed, make sure it's thick. You're wanting to put about maybe 4 or 5 inches of wood chips down. But before you put the wood chips down, try to make sure you can get it mowed. Try to get whatever living grasses, whatever is growing there, just down as low as you can, and apply your wood chips.
Okay. I've gotten to the point where I physically cannot do my in-ground garden anymore, and so I am very new to container gardening. Do I still have to have a soil test for the soil that I'm buying for the containers? And I'm asking for a friend because that might be a dumb question.
Okay, so typically speaking, if you're going to be doing it in containers or you're going to be doing it in raised beds and whatnot, and you are bringing in soil, like let's say it's in potting bags or bags of soil or whatnot, typically speaking, those soils, they're pretty robust. They have pretty much everything you need. So you're probably going to be good for like a year, maybe 2. At that point, I mean, it's not going to hurt you to do a soil test in each one of your raised beds. You just follow the exact same principle that you would growing in the ground in your garden or whatnot. Or you can, if you didn't want to do a soil test, you can, add your compost, add your leaves, add your mushroom compost and whatnot. It's not a foolproof method because yes, you're adding stuff that's good, it's beneficial, but does my soil already have too much of X? doesn't need more of Y and whatnot, and you don't know that without doing a soil test. So, yeah, it's not going to be the end of the world. I can tell you, I don't always get around to doing soil tests when I should, and some years I just add some extra fertilizer and keep on going. Hopefully none of my farmer friends are listening to this. But yeah, you know, sometimes you have to fudge it, but if possible, yeah, go ahead and do a soil test and just knock out a lot of questions that way.
Hey, do you have any tips for growing ginger or turmeric?
Yes, tips for growing ginger or turmeric. So, both of them do grow here in the South. Both of them grow very well. A couple things you'll want to keep in mind. A, make sure that your seed stock is decent. It's disease-free, it's healthy looking. For both of those, I can either go to a supplier and get those crops, the roots, the rhizomes for them if I need to. Or I can also just order ginger or turmeric from the grocery store. I try to, well, I don't try, I do tell it to give me organic both, so that way I know it's not been sprayed with a growth inhibitor. And then I bring it inside my house, and if it's not already forming, growth nodules or whatnot in there, I'll just keep it in a semi-dark place and just let it start to put on some growth. It does mean that I'm going to see the roots start to shrivel up a little bit. I'm not worried about that. I mean, as long as they're producing, you know, some growth, that's good. Then I'm going to go ahead and put them in a pot. I'm going to plant them rather shallowly. So we're looking at, you know, I'll fill up a pot like this, probably something up to here, and then I'm going to place my rhizome on top of that, and I'm probably not going to cover it. I'm just going to leave it sitting there. I'm going to water it, keep it damp. Don't overwater it. You will rot the tubers if you do that. It's going to take a long time. You're looking at about a month, maybe more, depending on the temperature. Like if it's nice and warm outside like it is today, stick it outside, you may get something faster. So start seeing the shoots coming up. Once the shoots are coming up, I may leave it in there for like another month or so until I've actually seen leaves and whatnot coming up or out of the shoots, and then I'm just going to take the whole thing and just transplant the whole thing into the ground. And at that point, I will cover the tuber with soil. Typically speaking, you're looking the earliest. It does not tolerate frost, so to save myself, I generally do it in May, early mid-May. It's a long season crop, so you're not going to get a harvest until generally about frost, so late October, November. Even with that long of a growing season, you're not going to get a good harvest the first year. You're going to get a harvest, you can still harvest it, pull it out of the ground, utilize it. But typically speaking, I will go ahead after that frost, I will mulch it, and then I'll forget about it. I'll leave it out there over the winter. It will survive our winters, even with as cold as it just got. Sometimes if something went a little funky, it may die, it may just rot and whatnot, but if you have more plants, they'll come back in the spring. It'll already be established, so it's going on to year 2. Generally, year 2 is when I'm going to go ahead and harvest it, simply because I'm going to have a bigger return on my investment as far as that is concerned. Now, both ginger and turmeric are very heavy feeders. They like a lot of fertilizer. So I just stick with my general triple 20 fertilizer, and I'm just going to be giving them that. Typically with those 2 crops, I don't do it every week. I'm backing off to like maybe once a month, but I'm making sure they have a decent amount of fertilizer. They're weed free, definitely keep them weed free. Any type of weeds around them, you're going to see your return is just going to be almost nothing. And it's a long season crop. Yes?
Okay, 2 questions. Snails and slugs, how to combat, because they destroyed my strawberries.
Yeah.
They get more of my strawberries than I do, for one. And they are in, most of my plants are in raised beds.
Okay. So yeah, there's a couple of different things you can do. Which I mean, if you're already in a raised bed, you're probably keeping the weeds at bay. But keeping them weed free, putting, instead of having, just bare soil around your strawberries, having like a mulch, like wood chips, around, the base of the plants is gonna help, keep the fruit up off the ground, which I've found helps a little bit. But generally speaking, what I do is I'll just get Sluggo, and I'll just spread that down the middle of my rows. Or you can do it around the base of your plants and whatnot, and they're gonna be attracted to that. It will take a little time, like a week or so, but yeah, if you just keep that application going, you're gonna have a much better harvest.
What about crushed eggshells? Does that help?
I mean, that's gonna be adding some calcium to the soil, but off the top of my head, I don't know if it does anything for the slugs and the snails.
Okay. And then the other question I had was with the chemtrails, how is that affecting the heirloom vegetable seeds?
I got no clue.
Okay, fair enough.
Uh-oh, I think questions are being limited.
How do you start planting a sweet potato? A sweet potato.
Sweet potato. Okay, so you can go at this, I'm gonna say two different ways. One, if you get a sweet potato from the store, if you kind of keep it in like I'm gonna say like a darker area, but I mean honestly, like in our kitchen, we put them in like a basket, and that may be set on like a shelf, maybe like the second shelf, the third shelf, so it's a little bit darker than the rest of the kitchen. And if you just forget about it, leave it there, you will start to see little growths happening on either end of the sweet potato. Typically speaking, for me, I can either wait and let that growth become more pronounced, stronger, vigorous, or once I see the growth, I can chop off the ends if they both have growth or whatnot, and then I'm just gonna go ahead and get a pot of potting soil or maybe some aged compost and just stick it in there. I'm not burying the entire thing. I'm just making sure, let's say this is the sweet potato, I'm putting dirt around the sides of it, but I'm keeping that top area where maybe the growth is happening exposed. I'm gonna water it, I'm not gonna overwater it. And then I'm going to see the growth starting to happen. It's going to come out of that. So that's option number one. And then once you have the growth coming out of that, you can, I don't want to say tear them off, but you can cut them off, and you're going to have sweet potato slips. And then at that point, you can go ahead and transplant that into either your raised bed, your garden area, or if you had a big enough pot, you can put it into there. The other option is you can get sweet potato plants from most nurseries. I've gotten them from Ace or George's Plant Farm. I believe they sell them in bundles of like 25 plants, and they have a wide variety of them. That's generally where I get mine. And they come as slips that are probably about this long. They've already got some roots forming on the lower part of the slips, and then I just plant from there. But if you go the slip route, make sure you plant it in the evening and you water it good, because the sun, especially if you get it at the end of April or the beginning of May, it can cook them.
I have a question.
Yes.
What are organic, non-animal fertilizers that we can use?
Cottonseed meal, alfalfa meal. Yeah, feather meal, but yeah, off the top of my head, that's some of those.
Thank you. I had one other question. On your microgreen, on your soil that you use, I missed that. What soil are you using in your microgreens?
I'm actually not using soil. This is a ProMix, which is a soilless medium.
ProMix.
Uh-huh.
It's not that, so it's not the coconut?
No.
Okay,
You,
permits.
you can do, I believe it's called a cocoa hair.
Mm-hmm.
Let's call it soil for lack of
Okay.
a better term. But yeah, that's just not what
So
we
you're
use.
using the permits?
Mhm.
Okay. Just one other question, sorry. I had one response to Pam over here on your raised bed. You're just starting. On my raised bed, what I did is I layered my bottom of it, the raised bed, I put hardware cloth. Then I layered the wheat cloth on top of that, and then on top of that I put the small rocks, the pebbles, and layered that, and we've had that for like 5 years, no problem with moles or anything like that. And as far as your critters, enclose. That's how we've kept them out of our garden. And then you'll be happy to have a really nice garden with no critters, which is nice. Yeah, because I got tired of my tomatoes being carried away. Literally being carried away. With big chunks in them. Yeah, so I think that's all. And Seth, let's give him a good round of applause. Thank you, Seth. We appreciate you coming out. We have some door prizes right now, and then Seth has some items up here. So we're going to just go quickly for our door prizes. I know people had some schedules to keep. So Tabitha, do you want to help me? We have some gardening tools. Yeah, we do. I know we're kind of mix them up. Jeff Ingalls. Jeff is right there. That's what you need, Jeff. There you go. Karen's going to put you to work. Okay. Paul Whitland? Paul. Yes, there you go. Levi here? Did they leave? I think they left. Okay, so let's go start again. Laura Contarino? Laura? Yes, there you go. And next is, we have a really nice pair of gardening gloves. I think so. A lady, okay. So maybe this one needs to go to, we can do that because the wife will probably. Luke Minster? Luke? Is Luke here? I think he left too. Okay. On to the next one. John Peckinpah. Okay. So Joe can use the gloves. And this is, last one is a really nice seed grid to help you plant your seeds so you can space them out and plant them evenly. Okay, so this is our grand prize. Oh, Debbie, is Debbie here? Debbie Lawrence? Debbie Lawrence! Okay. Our next class that we're going to be doing a bread making class. Okay, and so we'll send out the information. We don't have a date set, but we'll send out the information to you. So if you're, I've got all your contact information. If you haven't been with us before, you are going to get some emails and texting. We're just going to let you know events that we're doing. You know, if you want to join in, come on, join in. And please we encourage you to tell your friends about what we're doing and what we are. What you're learning. We've had a lot of amazing stories with different programs that we've had with our Dinner with a Doctor programs and having any health issues. You know, we want to help you with those too and pray for you. Oh, okay. Is that? Okay, so there's magazines up here, and Seth said that you're welcome to, but before you do that, let's close with a word of prayer, and then we can go ahead with magazines. Gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, we're thankful for this time that we've had to learn how to grow a garden. And we know gardens are very important.